All right, here we go. I am so excited about this. If you've seen the title now, you already know who we have. You're pumped. Let's get into this. Help me welcome the head coach of Vanderbilt University, the Commodores, one of the best mascots in the world, head coach Althea Thomas. Althea, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. How are you doing today, Mike?
Man, I'm talking to someone that I've known and respected for a long time. I'm getting paid on the job to talk to you. Come on, man. I got the second best job in the world. You as a coach have the first best job in the world. Okay, let's put the hierarchy correctly.
There it is. There it is.
Well, super excited to have you on the show today, Althea. You know, you have an amazing career that we're going to learn, amazing path and journey in this awesome profession. And it's so far, I don't use the word culminated, but it has led to today where you're now the head coach of Vanderbilt University in the SEC. That's amazing. I don't say culminated because the journey is still going, right? We're still writing chapters in this book.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah. So let's jump right into this. Want to start talking about how you got to where you are today, the people, the mentors, the influences that you've had. And I think probably with you, the best way to start is your Twitter handle. So if you know Althea on probably all of your social medias, I'm mainly on Twitter. It's not Althea Thomas. It's not head coach Big Dog or anything like that. It is coach's daughter and has been that probably for the whole time I've ever known you on social. So tell us, what does that mean, coach's daughter? What does that mean?
Well, first of all, before the obvious, for a long time when I would go, I don't know, to get ice cream to the store growing up, every time I would see somebody, they would say, "That's Coach's daughter. Hey, that's Coach's daughter." So I'm like, yes, it's me. I have a name. But it is definitely after my father, Coach Thomas, the real Coach Thomas, as he likes to say. But, you know, growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, he started a track club for my older brother when I was just born. And so I have always been Coach's daughter from the moment I was able to leave the house. And so, of course, you know, following my passion, running track and becoming a coach, it was just only natural. When social media got really cool and it just wasn't something that like a Facebook that started when I was in college, you know, I was asking my athletes, "Oh, you got a cool name, Hurdle Queen 22." And I'm like, what could I be? I'm like, Coach's daughter.
It's what you've always been. Just makes
That's
sense,
what
right?
I've always been.
So your dad's going to play a big part in your story. If you've
Mhm,
coached in the state of Alabama or maybe even the Southeast,
mhm,
you know the real, I can't even do air quotes here, the real Coach Thomas. I mean, just an enigmatic, is that the right word? An
mhm.
awesome figure. So I went to school at Troy University. We're going to learn where Althea, she went to much bigger, smarter school than me. I can't even say the word I don't know. He's a big, powerful figure in all the right ways. Tell us a little bit about dad, his background, this club. I didn't know it started with your older brother. I was not aware of that. So tell us just a little bit about dad and kind of the influence of how he got you started into track and field.
Well, my dad's always been in sports and he's from Illinois originally and ran track at Indiana State. A lot of people don't know that.
Wow, no.
Yes, and so him and my mom met in Illinois and they moved to Birmingham when she was pregnant with me. So I'm the third child.
Wow.
And even my name, they went through a really big tennis phase. And so my brother played tennis, my sister played tennis. And so I was named after Althea Gibson. So I always try to tell people I'm supposed to be like Venus and Serena, but I chose track, right? So, you know, after we moved to Birmingham, Bessemer, actually, you know, my dad and my siblings being new to the area, he was looking for sports for them to get involved in. And just the dynamics at the time in the early 80s, he decided that he wanted to start a program specifically for inner city kids. Inner city at the time just really being Bessemer, Alabama. So he started what was then called the Marvel City Striders. And then it became Birmingham Striders and more Alabama Striders, what people may know it as today. And so I was just that younger sibling that was never big enough to go to the track without mom, couldn't go to the track meets. Back then it was not USATF, but what was it? TAF? What was it? I
Tack.
can't remember. Yeah,
Yeah.
TAC. It was
Yeah.
TAC. I couldn't go to TAC nationals. Back then we had youth games. And so I was just always at home and thinking I'm missing out on something, in which I was. And my siblings would come back with these tans and t-shirts and big medals from the sports festival and things like that. And I was just like, I just want to go to a track meet. So like I mentioned earlier when we were talking, when I got old enough, I was 8 going to be 9. And in the age group track and field, the beginning age group then was the 9-10s. And so I was old enough to run track. And if my dad said I had to be fast enough not to go back home, I did whatever he told me I needed to do.
So that's interesting because it's obvious as an 8, 9, 10-year-old, you'll see, especially siblings. It's one thing, other friends, but your siblings bringing home t-shirts and bags and medals. When you actually, when it was time for you to actually step on the track and do the events, was there any like, wait a minute, this is hard work. This hurts in some aspects, right? Was there any of that?
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. And I just loved it. And it was so many people on the track team that were my siblings' age. So they were like 10 years older than me, that I would just see on their journeys. They would, win state, win club titles, get college scholarships, go on to become All-American. So I just watched all of it and I never got caught in the what's going on now. I always had something to look forward to. Like, I want to be like Vanetta Jeffries. I want to be like Curtis Perry. I want, these names that even Curtis Perry was an NCAA champion. Vanetta got a gold medal in bobsled, of all things. So I just had things to look at and look forward to, and I never got caught in it now.
So fast forward to high. Did you go to Bessemer High or did you?
So we moved from Bessemer to Birmingham to the Roebuck Huffman area when my brother began high school. And so all of my, kindergarten up basically was there.
So talk to us about your high school career. How'd that go? This will tell you how old I am, everybody. So I saw Althea run, when I was at Troy University, we recruited, and let me tell you, I think I sent one recruiting male. We used to send recruiting all male back then. Althea didn't even return it. I'm a little, yeah. This is going to be, I'm fighting hard to make this not a revenge podcast, to be honest with you, Althea, just so I'm still hurt emotionally, but we'll learn where she went. A little bit better track program. And you know how much I love Troy. You'll find out here soon where she went to school. It's pretty good. But talk to us about your high school career. How'd that go? Did dad coach you high school as well? Or was it the high school coach, or how did that work out?
So started off, it just was more summer track and definitely middle school. My dad was the middle school coach. He actually coached everything. He helped coach basketball. He coached track. And he even substituted in the band a couple times. But I went to Huffman High School first. And so I was there for 2 years. And then I ultimately transferred to Pelham High School. We moved out to Pelham in Shelby County after my sophomore year. But at Huffman, I ran track. I played volleyball against my dad's will. And I ran track and played basketball. So it was awesome.
Why didn't dad want volleyball? Was it the sport of volleyball, or did he just want you to only do track?
He wanted me to do basketball and track, and he kind of understood that I needed to be an athlete, but then at some point it was a breaking point. And he definitely had his eyes set on, like, we're going to try to get a scholarship. And in volleyball, you have to do so much club ball. And it was already whether I was going to do summer track and club basketball, AAU basketball. So he was just like, it's just not really worth it. And, the risk of getting hurt and things like that. I played it 1 year.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I know dad understands and encourages, multi-sport athletes and athleticism, not just, sticking yourself in one lane and being done. But it makes complete sense because volleyball is huge club. I mean, basketball is huge club. And then in your world, track club was huge as well. So there is a breaking point. Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. So how did your career go? What events were you in? And why is the hurdles the best event in the world?
Well, in middle school, I did a little bit of everything and never did hurdles. And then as I got taller and, start slapping backboards and things like that, I got a lot better in jump. So in high school, I did about 8 events, but back then you could do 5 at the state meet. So every year I would do a little bit of everything and kind of strategically see what events that I should and could do at the state meet. So in my high school career, I had won state. Now we had freshman state back then as well. You remember that?
Yep.
But between indoor and outdoor, I had won a title in the high jump, the long jump, the triple jump, the 400, the 800, and eventually the 300 hurdles. And it took a lot of persuasion and sneakiness on my side. But
Is that right? Sneakiness that you
yes.
wanted to do it, or dad, who was the resistor here?
Oh, so I wanted to do it, but my dad is very transparent, and he knows what he knows and he knows what he doesn't know. And he's like, you're not doing the hurdles. And at the time, one of my biggest rivals was Tacita Bass out
Oh
of Mobile.
yeah,
And
Tacita,
she,
awesome. Yeah.
yes, eventual All-American in the multis and everything. So I was matching her up with her in different places. So, you remember me, I was a stick, and Tacita was chipped out of marble from the Greek gods. And so when it came to wanting to do the hurdles, he's like, first of all, you are going to have to go up against Tacita again. And I don't know the hurdles. We're not doing that. So, but when I transferred to Pelham, I was coached by Coach John Parks there.
Okay.
And so as I got much better in all of my events, enough to be able to say there may be room for me to dabble somewhere else, I begged and I begged and I begged Coach Parks to let me do the hurdles. I just absolutely begged him. And he kind of dismissed me and, didn't want my daddy to get mad at him. And he's like, we'll see, we'll see. And then eventually he said, okay. We had like that one home track meet that was before sectionals. And he had me doing lead leg into the fence. And he just had me do that all week. And he said, I'll let you do the hurdles if you do the 1500. So, as an 800-meter runner, you're like, I barely wanted to run cross country. He made me do it. And I said, oh, you make me do the 15? I want to do the 100. I want to beat everybody on the 401. So at this meet, I did the 1500, the 100, and came at the end of the meet and did the 300 hurdles.
First of all, that's maybe the wildest combo meet anybody's ever done. Second of all, you were really dedicated. What a terrible trade-off. Like, I'll let you do the hurdles, but you got to do the mile. Like, that's not fair. Like, do the 4x4.
No, it's not.
The mile.
Yeah, I mean,
cow.
He said, you got to do the mile. You need to do this. You got to get tougher. I'm like, all right, put me in 100 too. So man. I was a good bargainer.
Yeah. Although you still did the mile. So, there were some bargaining skills to improve there.
Again.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned before, I kind of got this sixth sense kind of early to not really get caught up on the now and not see the forest for the tree. So, okay, if I get something out of it, you get something out of it. It's okay. We can both be winners.
So you're better than me. I'd have false started or something in that mile. It was not happening. It wouldn't have happened.
Oh, it was a home meet. You would have just said it was not a false start, and we would have did it again.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's like, no, it's a malfunction. Back on you're like, son of a. So that's interesting. I would have thought, I knew you came into the hurdles game late, but I would have thought that was kind of like, I thought that would have been dad's like evil plan of like, oh no, she's going to do jumps and and then we're going to just destroy everybody in the hurdles. I love dad's like self-awareness though, like that's key in life. Right. So I love dad's self-awareness. Like, hey, this ain't my thing. So here is my thing. Let's keep focusing over. And by the way, you're doing well over here. So it's not like we were trying to find an event for you, for crying out loud. Now, one of the things I love as a native Alabamian, talking to other Alabamians that ran high school, is talking about the state of the indoor state meet back in the day.
Oh yeah. Every time we go to the complex, I just say, you lucky, lucky, lucky athlete.
Right? When I was consulting on the Crossplex, and it it took about a decade to actually get it up and going for many reasons. It was like I'm not going to lose this track because I had to run on this wooden track in a horse barn. like Alabama deserves a track like this. And I mean, it can't be more night and day from what we had when we were running. People just don't understand what we
I
had.
think I still have splinters from
How about the kids that would fall off of lane 4 or 5 on the upper side of the
It was
curve?
the highest bank I've ever experienced in my life. The highest.
People don't believe. I tell them, it's like, it was actually colder inside the barn than it was outside, and dustier because of all the horse bedding or whatever. Yeah, terrible. I don't know how. I just don't know how. You look back on it, it's like, how in the world did we do this? It's unbelievable. So where were you? We're in high school right now. Where were you mentally as far as a career or a major going into college? What were you thinking at that point in time?
Well, very early, like I said, I knew I wanted to run in college, and I knew I wanted to earn a scholarship. But going back to summer track, we had summer track nationals in Baton Rouge. I was 11 years old, and it was at LSU. And, while, we getting shuttled in and got to go here, checking in here, I saw the cage and there was a tiger. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So being 11 and probably, not really paying attention and like, oh, look, people in the stands. Oh, there's a tiger. I remember just thinking, I want to run really fast so I can hurry up and go see this tiger over there. So I ran. My dad took me over there to see the tiger, and I just thought it was so cool. And I kept saying, I want to go to the school where the tiger is. Now, I was 11. This is like 1992, right? So this is the beginning of this 10-year national championship. And back then, there wasn't TFers, there wasn't instant Instagram and all these tweets about what someone's running. They haven't even caught their breath and we already know what they're running. We used to have to wait till the summer to get track and field news and know who won.
Yeah.
And so my dad would just always have them. And he was like, look, you remember the school with the tiger? I'm like, yeah, you want to go there, don't you? Look what they did. Look what they did. It's like, you want to work to do that? I'm like, yeah, all right, let's go do Hill Saturday.
Oh, that's so okay. Good. Wow.
Okay, I'll go run and do that. So very early on, it kind of was embedded. And my dad is a mastermind that he really got it focused away from the tiger and about there's a standard and you have to meet the standard. It's not just going to be given to you. So, I understood really early on that I had to hit these markers during the year, during high school, and understanding that they didn't just recruit in one state. I was competing against the big states of Texas and Florida and the countries. And so, I just wanted to, be on track to be recruitable.
What were you thinking career-wise at this point? Did you have an idea, like at this point, were you thinking, I definitely want to be a track coach, or were you thinking an accountant or a CEO, or what were you thinking profession-wise?
So, I was a standard teenager, even though I was coach's daughter. I didn't want to be like my mom. I didn't want to be like my dad. They didn't seem very cool to me. And so my mom, I mean, teenagers think that. We're just being honest.
I just got sad because I have a 10 and a 7-year-old. So I'm like, oh, they're going to think that soon of me.
Yeah, it's going to be about 8th grade. They're not going to seem very cool. But my mom was an actuary. And so she was just take your daughter to work day was kind of boring.
So explain what an actuary is, because that's we sometimes hear that term, but it's not the most common job profession. Can you explain that for people?
So she was a mathematician, and usually actuaries, they work for insurance companies. So they crunch all the statistics and the numbers to be able to determine what your premium should be for your car insurance or for your health insurance. So
they take
she takes all the
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought, yeah.
All the data, all the small stories of the average teenager may have a fender bender, the average car drives. So she takes all that data and she produces the numbers to help the company be able to insure and not go bankrupt, basically.
So you'd go to take your daughter to work day and you were like, this sucks. Like, come on, what are we doing here, right?
Yeah, I mean, when she comes home, she's talking about these stories, but then she wasn't like an attorney interviewing people who had accidents. She was like had a pie. You remember back when Apple used to print those long sheets that were connected with the person,
Yes.
and she's just like flipping through and going and making numbers, and I'm like, I
Like,
had to
where's
whisper.
the fun at?
And I had to whisper. I couldn't have my outdoors track voice. I was just like, this is all
So
right. So
actuary was off the list. Okay.
and I was good at math, and I was like, yeah, don't want to do that. Didn't want to coach. Again, I was influenced a lot by my older siblings. I was that younger sibling that, even if I didn't admit it when I was younger, looked up to them. And my sister, she attended University of Michigan, and she majored in kinesiology. And her personality, though, was that when she was at home and maybe had to pick me up from a basketball practice or whatever, and I'm limping, I rolled my ankle, she would not just wrap my ankle or give me ice. She would make me read what I needed to do and tell her what the best plan was. So we got to kind of accountable family like this, right?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, this is a supporting family. Like, we're all going to be working together to get better here.
Believe me, it sounds better on a podcast than what it actually felt like. She was definitely the evil older sister for a long time. But I kind of like kinesiology, and I'm running track. I don't want to be a coach, but I'm exploring what that means. And so that was starting to formulate, getting in the anatomies in class, doing well in the sciences. And I'm like, okay, do I want to be a doctor? Do I want to be a physical therapist? It was beginning to evolve that I wanted to do something with the body and not just general science.
So you end up going to LSU.
Which
was kind of you didn't say this, but I'll say this, the dream school because of, what's the name of that tiger? Is it Benny?
No.
Oh my God. Oh my,
Benny is a coach, not a tiger.
If you could have seen her face right there. Oh man, I just stepped right into it. What's the name of the tiger?
Mike the tiger.
Oh my God, how did I not know that? I thought it was Benny the Bengal. Who is that? That's somebody, isn't it?
Maybe Cincinnati. I don't know.
Everybody is yelling at me right now that's listening. They're like, hey, idiot, it's not Benny, it's Mike Tiger, which is cool, by the way. We went to some meets there throughout my career, and it is like a staple of the going to campus tour. Like, you've got to go see the tiger. You just have to. It's just like kind of cool, It's like when we'd go to Gainesville, you'd have to go to that pond that had campus that had the gators. Like, you just had to go see. Like, it was cool to see a gator on the Gators campus. I don't know. So you go to LSU. Right. Do you major in kinesiology? Is that what you ended up getting your degree in?
Yep, majored in kinesiology. Got a couple of minors along the way, and shadowed a chiropractor. I thought I wanted to be a chiropractor, working with a chiropractor on the team. We had a ART chiropractor specialist that traveled with us a lot, and I said, this is pretty cool. After doing some shadowing, a lot of them pushed me to say, oh, be a doctor of osteopathic medicine. You got a little more leeway, in your practice. And so I wanted to go that route. But while in college, one of my coaches kept telling me I was going to be a coach, and I would get so mad. Oh, I hated when he would tell me that.
Oh, let's call him out. Who was this?
It was Coach Mark Elliott.
Mark, okay.
He would tell me all the time and if anybody knows him, he's pretty laid back. And so when I was training in his group for the 800, he would just do subtle stuff like walk away, and I would have to get the freshmen to do the drills or different stuff like that. And then he would say, you're going to be a coach, right? I'm like, no, I'm not. Did you see my organic chemistry exam? I'm not going to be a coach. And he was like, okay, whatever. And so he kind of just would subtly say it once every couple months. And then after I finished my eligibility and was still completing my degree, he asked me if I wanted to be a volunteer. And naturally, as an athlete being so immersed in that culture, I wanted to still be a part of it in some way. And so that kind of started this is interesting. I like this.
So it sounded like Mark kind of identified leadership in you at a fairly early stage. That's what, when people say you're going to be a coach, it's not because they look at you as an athlete and say, oh, the X's and O's and how to train at this point. It's more of like, oh, you're a leader amongst our team. And that's what coaches are at the end of the day. You have to have a strong leadership background. So it sounded like Mark kind of had this like, oh, you know what? Out of all of my athletes, not saying anything about the other athletes, but like, hey, Althea is kind of showing some major leadership here, like enough that he would trust you. He'd walk away and let you run the warm-ups, do drills, things like that.
Yep. So that's definitely how it started. And then once I graduated, I went back home, and my sister-in-law, she had this great idea that we should go teach science in the STEM area and then apply for professional school. And so I was like, that'll be fun. I'm gonna go back to Huffman, my original school, the school I grew up in from middle school and high school, and I'm gonna be that track coach. And so that's kind of how it started.
So it sounds like, correct me where I'm wrong here, that the motivation was not necessarily to be the track coach. It was to teach STEM. And then, okay, I'll also be like, I'll use that into my track coaching. Like I'll encourage the kids on the team to go that kind of route that they could do these kind of things.
Right. And, like I said, there was so many older people on my dad's track team. He always would instill us that whatever we did, we needed to pay it forward in a sense. We needed to come back and help other people be there and let it kind of grow that way. So older people in his program did it with me. I just thought it was natural. I was like, yeah, how many times does someone at Huffman would see a scholarship track athlete that has been a part of some really good teams? And so, yeah, I think that'd be great.
Kind of that representation matters, right? Like, hey,
yes.
Here's someone who went to Huffman and look what she did and is becoming.
Yes.
You also can become this, right?
Absolutely.
That's interesting because that is one of our goals here with this podcast, is to show other coaches, like if they look at Althea Thomas and say, man, she became a head coach of an SEC team. Wait a minute. She started out at small town Alabama. Oh, wait a minute. I started out in small town Virginia, Colorado, wherever. Like maybe I could do this too. Like to kind of show like, hey, you don't have to be some grand, amazing athlete, which you were. We skipped all over that part, but that's okay. But like you can, no matter where you come from, you can become what you want to become. And a lot of the skills that are needed for that are what we talk about here in the podcast, the leadership, the drive for education, things like that. Mentors play a big part, as we're seeing as well. Like I wonder, I think about like a Mark Elliott, if he wouldn't have verbalized that to you, how different your path might have been if he just said, yeah, you're doing great, Althea, go run another 800 or go do the 400 hurdles now or whatnot. Like instead of saying like, hey, you're going to be a coach, like you're a leader, like the kind of more confidence that instilled in you to now pay it forward, like Dad would talk about and show. I love that. That's really cool. So let's start working through the progression. You're a little bit like me. I only did 10 years in coaching, but had 5 different institutions. You're a little bit like me. We got some schools to get through here. And I love that because each one brings different parts into you. It's like it's like a big puzzle, right? And here's a little piece that's Clemson. And here's a little piece that makes so much more sense with Clemson now, by the way, UAB and Georgia. And, so let's start talking about that. So Huffman, how many years? And then what was next?
So I did 2 years coaching at Huffman. And then, I was still very young and I had friends that were graduating and getting jobs at different places. So I had a group of friends that were in Boston. And, after visiting several times, I said, well, I'm gonna move to Boston. Like I'm young, I could just go to Boston. So I went up there and I coached at a high school up there, Sharon High School, and did some personal training. This is interesting. I even worked at a juvenile as a unit coordinator. Yes. Very interesting. In Boston, in Roslindale.
Why? There's got to be a reason. You don't just like, hey, I'm gonna go do this job now. What?
I started off, the first job that I saw on monster.com or something was just being a personal trainer. And upon them seeing my resume and me talking about track, they introduced me to another personal trainer who was coaching at the high school. And he said, come with me, I'm gonna get you this high school job. And then he even said, hey, one of my clients is a director over there and we should go over there too. So I was just like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. That'd be fun. Again, it's good to have some positive influence and even that group of kids who may have not, made the best decisions or had some unfortunate things that led to their life. they can see something different. And so I did
Now,
that.
I'm going to stereotype you here a little bit, Althea, and I can do this because I'm in this stereotype. We're from the South. We're from Alabama.
Oh yeah.
How did Boston Winners?
Oh.
How did you handle that? I don't know how you could have handled that.
They were so deceptive because you would wake up and the sun would be so bright and it would be 15 degrees. And I hated it. And coaching the beginning of outdoor season, snow.
That's why
coaching in the snow.
You said you moved to Boston. I was like, wow, like that's a wake up call. I mean, it's one thing in your college career. I imagine you probably traveled to some places for meets that were cold, but you're there for a weekend, a day, and eventually probably sunlight came out and it became at least 70 and it was okay. To live in a place like Boston. Shout out to Mark Mangiacotti, Kaba Tolbert, all those guys and gals up there. I just don't know how you do it.
Right. And in the spring and summer, it was beautiful.
Beautiful.
But coaching wise, I really appreciated the indoor season they had with the track, with the high school kids. I really appreciate it. And we got to run at the Reggie Lewis Center almost every weekend. And that's where, coming up in high school, I would fly all the way up there for what used to be indoor nationals for high school. And so I appreciated it. And, in the week when we would go to these very circular 170 meter high school tracks and they would complain, I would say, have you ever ran in a barn?
That's right.
Have you ever ran on wood? You want to see this? And so we're like, all right, the crazy coach from the South says that we can't complain. Like, let's do this.
Experience matters. Let me tell you about my experience on the wood in the horse barn, baby.
In a barn.
Decatur, Alabama.
Alabama.
So how long were you battling the winters there, and where did we go next, and why? What's the motivation to move on?
So I was there not a full 2 years. So I did one full season, and then I would say in the middle of the fall, I was had a couple clients still doing personal training, and one client, he kept saying, "You're a good salesperson, like you should get into sales." And he worked in sales, so he was encouraging me to kind of look into it. And I looked into it in Boston, but it was a lot of experienced salesmen up there. And so I moved back home and I started doing a corporate sales job. And I said, okay, I've kind of scratched that track coach itch. It's time for me to be a big adult and get a real job, put on some clothes and not wear Nikes every day. Let's do this.
That's so interesting that this is not a story. If we look at Althea Thomas as just a bio, right? Like head coach of Vanderbilt, and we'll talk about some of these other schools. It's like, oh, and we know about dad and his background in coaching track. It's like, oh, like Althea, you were destined to be a track coach. And maybe that was true, but this path is going, personal training, teaching, now corporate sales. Like
and I worked at CarMax when I was a teacher too. It was just all over the place. My sister, she had some nicknames for me that.
Oh, we got to hear those. What kind of nicknames does sister have? Sister's
it
tough
was
too.
Just like, you got so many jobs. You just all over. It was all kind of stuff.
So how did you like corporate sales? And you're back home at least. I mean, there's benefit there, but how did you like that?
It was competitive and it was always something to win, in the quarter and a bonus or a trip. And so the competitive edge was really good. And, I was selling basically cleaning supplies to every industry you can imagine. And again, my brother, he's in the HVAC industry. So he would give me good leads and this is how you sell this cleaner for this radiator. And you go tell them. So it turned from coach's daughter to your Rick's sister. And they'll let you in. And so it was fun. It was competitive. I really learned how to not just be a talker, but have some intent and develop relationships. And I think all my stops eventually really propelled me as a coach.
Spoiler alert, I love sales. It's kind of what I do, right? But I get to sell track and field equipment. I'm not sure I'd be as good or as enthusiastic or as passionate if I were selling cleaning solutions and things like that.
It was everything. It was a factory in Birmingham, and I just learned all the different industries. They make every cardboard box for Pizza Hut.
What, really?
And it is the dustiest.
I'm sure.
And you go in and you just come out and you just sneeze and have to blow your nose and everything. So some of that was just to manage the dust that just
Oh yeah.
flies constantly, and it's a hazard. And
Right. Yeah.
then your standard stuff, your hotel, cleaning stuff, softball, AAU clubs come through and get red clay everywhere. I got something for that.
Huh.
It was so many areas that it was just really crazy.
And I love how you described your competitiveness as what kind of drove you. Because again, I assume no one's gonna say that, cleaners and things like that are exciting.
Right.
They're needed, they're a utility,
Right.
but they're not cool like a pole vault pit and a hurdle and those kind of
No.
things, right? But
No.
but your competitiveness, it sounds like what kind of got you in there and drove you there and kind of probably made you successfully doing it.
Yeah, and then I'm still an athlete and very hands-on. And so, if I come in the back of your restaurant and you got this nasty grill that's full of carbon and you're scrubbing with this, pad, and I'm like, you spray this on it, you let it sit for a second and wipe it off. They're like, she just came and cleaned our grill. I'm like, yeah, so we have this. How much you want?
I've been blessed to interview over 120 coaches on this podcast. No one has given me a cleaning tip until today. I love that. Thank you. So where did we go from there? Let's get into something exciting. Tell me now we get into coaching, or now what do you
Absolutely.
do? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
So I'm still kind of helping my dad with his club team and coaching a little bit. And I just really got to this place around April where something was just missing. And ironically, I was on a sales call in Oxford, Alabama. And I think I was supposed to go to the high school, or somehow I just end up, a car drove itself to the high school. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, they look like they're going to practice track. And I found myself in the parking lot just watching them from the car. Kind of scary, right? But I'm just watching them from the car. And the next day I came back at the same time. I had that region again, that area. And I went back, I was like, they should be practicing track. And then I recognized the coach. When I went to college, he had become the track coach at Pelham. So I didn't know him as a coach, like coaching me, but I definitely knew he had been at my high school alma mater. So I get out the car and I go, and he's just excited. Oh my gosh, y'all sit down. This is Althea.
A star has arrived.
Oh, and I was just like, and I like zoned in on one athlete. And I'm like, if you do these high knees like this, and if you do that, you can go places. You would be better than me. And he was like, oh my gosh, thank you for saying that. I've been trying to tell him. And I went home and I boohoo cried. I boohoo cried. I called my sister-in-law. She came up, I boohoo cried. And I was like, I just want to coach track. And she's like, oh, you are so confused. Now, remember, we were supposed to go to professional school together. At this point, she's probably 4 years in getting her PhD in engineering. And I did not go to professional school.
Wow.
And I just want to coach. I don't know what to do. I need to see if I can get my teaching certificate back. It's labs, da, da, da. And I was at summer track practice and I was giving one of my speeches to the athletes who kind of weren't feeling that day. And I was like, I wish the only thing I had to do was go to class and go to practice. Like, this is the life. Like, you have a good opportunity. And the phone rung and it was UAB. One of my dad's former athletes who was younger than me, she was running at UAB and she went up to get her summer workouts and saw that one of the coaches left. And she said, I heard Althea's back in town. You have to hire her.
Wow.
And the rest is history.
I love this. You and your sister talk about going to professional school as she's 4 years into it, getting closer to her PhD. Like, her plan is being a work. Like, she's like, see, I know where I'm going towards. And
oh, absolutely.
And not to put words in her mouth or to make this negative at all, because I know it's all out of love because it's your sister. It's like, Althea, what are you doing? Like, you've gone to Boston now, you've done corporate sales. Now you back to want to be a track. Like, what are you doing with your life? When in reality, life was putting you on that path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it still was destined. It was destined.
Yeah.
I tried to run away, but it was some necessary stops.
What was it? That's a powerful, impactful story of you see in Oxford practice and you go home and it's so emotional for you. Like you have to let it out. You cry, like you have an emotional outburst here. You're still involved in track. It's not like track's not part of your life at all, right? Dad's still there. You're helping out with the club. What was it about seeing? Was it seeing the kids? Was it seeing the coach do his craft? What was it that just was like a catharsis for you?
I don't know. I think it was more that I saw where I was not being myself. I'm in a car, back in the day when we had maps, I'm going to these businesses, trying to get in the door, and I just saw, it was like an out of body experience. Like I'm supposed to be over there. I'm not supposed to be over here. I'm not supposed to be doing this.
I'm good and I'm playing this role over here, but I am this.
Absolutely.
And I'm denying that because I'm doing these other things, these other roles and jobs and things like that.
Yeah, I was believing, that you're just a coach. For some reason that was in my head, even though I just know how much my dad impacted so many people. I was believing, I was like, coaches may not have a lot of money. High school and club coaches, they're not knocking down the door, buying big houses, and I'm like, I want to make money. I want to live this glamorous life, I won this trip to Orlando. Look at there. Like, yeah.
I've said this before. You mentioned that word just, I'm just a coach. And sometimes it even goes down to I'm just a high school coach or I'm just a D3 coach. And I always remind people, take that word just out of there. You are a coach. You are a D3 coach, a high school coach. Where you are, you can, and if you're a coach, you probably are making a huge positive influence on young people's lives. You're not just a coach, you are a coach. It's one of the most noble, greatest professions there is out there, specifically track and field, because of the numbers that we reach out there. So yeah, always, anytime I hear someone say, well, I'm just a high school coach, I'm like, take that word just out. That's a belittling. You are not. You are uplifted. So you go to UAB, great school, second to Troy in the state of Alabama.
Well, you have two programs, so I'll say that. You got to coach men and women.
Exactly. So far. So what was it like? You're a college coach. What's it like? You're at UAB, you're home, in the Birmingham area. It's kind of home at that point now. It for sure is home. What's it like coaching at UAB? Who was?
I was the jumps coach.
Yeah,
I was a jumps and multis coach. So I didn't start off as a sprint coach.
Who was the head coach at that time?
Ray Stansfield.
Yeah, right. Now back at Houston. Yeah,
yes,
Ray.
yes. Just got back at Houston.
Very cool.
So I interviewed with Ray. He hired me. He had one rule when I came on my interview, because now I'm corporate America. I know how to dress the part, And he said, I think you'll do good, but I have one rule: don't wear those heels to work anymore. Because he didn't want me to be taller than him. But
there may not be a dress code, but there is not a dress code.
If anybody knows who Ray Stansfield is, no one on his staff is going to outshine him. He is a fit
yes
man.
Yes, he is that. Absolutely. Awesome. So are you how many years were you at UAB?
I was there 2 years.
So in that 2 years, did you fully embrace now Coach Thomas? Like, now I am a coach. This is my career path.
Oh, absolutely. And it was Coach Stansfield, it was Kurt Thomas, who is now the head coach at UAB, and then it was Althea Thomas. So on the first day being there, the athletes came to my office and said, we already have a Coach Thomas, so you have to be Coach AT. And I said, all right, I'm fine, as long as you call me something.
Like, that's so disrespectful. Kurt should have just went by Kurt. First of all, Kurt, former guest on the Gill Athletics Nations podcast. You got to go listen to him. He's awesome. Second of all, was my GA at Mississippi State. So I know Kurt real well here. He should have went by KT. Give Althea her dues here, Kurt. I'm so disappointed in you there. It seems like it was the athlete's choice, though. So I'll give him a little.
It was the athlete.
Yeah, literally. So what are you, now that you are like capital A, capital R, capital E, you are a track coach. What are you doing differently? And what I mean by that at this point, are you doing any coaching education? Are you reaching out to anybody like, hey, I'm a college coach. What's that mean? How do I do better at that?
Oh, absolutely. So being in Conference USA at the time, I'm coaching the jumps. I knew how to make them faster. I was roommates with some great jumpers at LSU. At this time, Coach Boo is helping me. He's like, all right, he hadn't started any education yet, but I'm figuring it out. I'm like, what was this? What was that? And so I'm applying these things, but I would lean in on everybody. I mean, at the time, Gret Stringer was at Southern Miss. Carol Smith was at UCF. So as I'm going and competing, I'm watching, I'm looking, my cousin, he's very influential. He is a men's basketball coach. He's a current coach at Florida State. And at the time, he may have been at Georgia Tech. I'm not real sure yet. He's been at Auburn, Georgia Tech, wow. UT Chattanooga. So he is the only person in our family before me that was college coaching. And so as soon as I got the job, he did two things. He was in Atlanta. He was at Georgia Tech. He made me come to Atlanta for the weekend, and I had a one-on-one recruiting clinic with him.
Wow.
Yes. And then the second thing he said, there's a convention. I don't know what it's called, but there is a convention. And you need to go, and you need to dress the part, and you need to wake up and do the 8 o'clock seminars. And he said, don't hang out in the lobby. And I said, okay. So I'm leaning in on coaches. I'm preparing to go. Figured out the convention was in Orlando. No, it was in Arizona that year. Preparing to go. I asked my family, like, I don't want anything for Christmas. I need a flight. I need a hotel. I need to pay these fees. And so, yeah, I just tried to just learn as much as possible. My dad naturally is like, oh, Coach so-and-so, this club has some kids, call him Coach so-and-so here. They're going to know who you are. And they're like, Althea, got a girl for you. So I was just 100% immersed.
In every profession, I imagine. So I've done 3 professions in my life, right? Coaching, college track and field, now here as a sales professional at Gill, and this brief stint in between where I was a professional poker player. In every profession, you can do it different ways, right? You can be professional, like learn your craft, continue to learn your craft to get better at your craft, etc. Or you can just do the job, right? Mm-hmm. And so in every profession, including coaching, we have that. There's guys and gals that become coaches because they just love to be outside and they just want to play track and things like that, right? You seem, thinking about that story of your cousin saying, hey, you're coming here, we're going to sit down and talk about recruiting. We're going to talk about, I remember when I first got into it, Coach Marshall Goss, God bless him, at Indiana, sat down and was like, hey, here's budgeting, and I was, first time I've gotten to coaching, so I didn't think about those kind of things, but like this professional side of it, you talk about, like, I don't want anything for Christmas. I got, okay, cousin says I need to be at the convention and I need to be at the 8 o'clock, I know he's using that as a euphemism, like don't sleep in all day is what he was saying, but being at the clinics, paying attention, taking notes, listening. Yep. As you look back on your career, does that play all the way through? Like, are you very conscientious about what you're doing, why you're doing, how you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. Because I was young and I looked very young, I wanted to make sure that people took me seriously and knew that it wasn't just a stop, especially when you go into people's homes and you're talking to parents and, they're like, well, you're not much older than my daughter, it doesn't seem. And even just the other coaches, the other coaches I'm coaching against and things like that. So absolutely, it was something that I wanted to make sure I did. It's something that I learned at Huffman as well. The football coach who was the athletic director, he was excited. He had been the coach at Huffman when my brother was at school, when I was there. And he said, you have to come back because we're having a problem reaching the females. And I know you're only 22, but you have to dress don't wear it too short, don't do that. And you have to pull them in and talk to them. So it was kind of instilled in me early to, make sure I portrayed the right image. I had the right brand.
Right.
And it was very important.
So where did we go from UAB?
So from UAB, I was there 2 years. Then I got an opportunity to go to Kentucky. And so went to the SEC almost immediately there. So it was great. I was there 2 years again. Coached some really good athletes, and Jenna Martin was a 400 All-American, broke a couple of school records. I coached with James Thomas. So there's another Thomas, right? So AT was just going to stick at this point. And, we co-coached the SEC champion in the multi-events. And, again, my experience at UAB helped me to understand sprinters that jumped and jumpers that sprint, and be able to be cohesive when needed and when asked. So I was there for 2 years, and then Coach Weber retired. And I was back at, oh my God, is my world about to end? Like, I decided to do this. And, in that year, it was a lot of transition that year. And Coach Greene, he got the job at Purdue. And when I was at Huffman, Coach Greene came and spoke at a clinic, I think in Huntsville. And that was my first clinic that I ever went to. And from then, I knew him from competing against Arkansas, but from then he did take a special interest in me. And if I ever saw him or talked to him, he really gave some good advice. So when he got the position at Purdue, it was just a great opportunity. And he said, well, I want you to come up here. And so that's what I did.
He's one of those guys I just have to get on the show, because one of the most positive, consistently positive, and authentically consistently positive. Like, when I first met him, when I was coaching at Mississippi State, actually I probably met him when I was at Ball State, but I was like, hey coach, how you doing? Oh, I'm fantastic. Oh, I'm great. And it was always like, not everybody is always this way. And fast forward 20 years later, it's like, hey coach, how you doing? Oh, I'm blessed. Oh man, it's awesome. Yeah. If you're on Facebook friends with him, you see him working out, and he celebrates his wife and the kids. It's just, he's just like one of the most, you can't help but put a smile on your face when you talk to Lonnie Greene. So what a great person to be in your life and pour into you. So as you're working through Kentucky and Purdue, what are you learning at this point? So, a lot of times with coaches and coaching careers, there's this transient property, meaning you have a bunch of schools, and we're going to see that there were several schools in a short career path. By the way, I'm guilty. I was that same way here too. Right. And sometimes it's because we're searching for something. So for me, I'm guilty. I was searching I wanted to get to the SEC. I thought if you make it to the SEC, life is grand, perfect, no problems. Right. And then I got there and I was like, "Ooh, this is a pretty tough conference." A little difference here in the SEC, boys and girls. What do you, as you're journeying through UAB, Kentucky, Purdue, and you're still you're in the infancy of your career here, anything jaded? Like, are you like, oh man, did I make the right choice here? Or the opposite? Was it reinforcement of like, yeah, this is right. This is where I'm supposed to be going. I'm headed correctly.
Yeah, it was more reinforcement. I would get asked that a lot, like, what's your dream school? What's your destination job? And I was like, I don't have one. Like, it's not a school or a city. It's just like, I just want to go somewhere and be impactful, be relevant. I think from the very beginning, what I would observe coming from my dad's program, coming from college, is that there was just a particular culture. Even when I was at Pelham and we won a couple state titles, there was a particular culture that I assumed everybody understood that wasn't present. And, you're kind of chasing getting faster or getting a trophy or getting ranked, and you're missing the culture. And so I just looked at every school I was at as an opportunity to try to build a culture. Now, I didn't always know how to build it. I just knew what it looked like. And I just knew when I was looking at it, like, that doesn't look right. Like this isn't it. This isn't how you get the end result. And of course, people would naturally ask me, well, what did y'all do at LSU? I'm like, well, y'all didn't have this at LSU. Y'all didn't have that problem. I said, oh, yes, we did. But it just didn't matter. It was like, it's not an absence of challenges or problems. It's not an absence of it. It's just when you keep the main thing, the main thing. So I kind of got, definitely infatuated with trying to, I guess, grow a culture wherever I was at.
That's a great point about you didn't have those issues at LSU. We look at some programs as like this perfect world, the LSUs, the Oregons, maybe USCs, et cetera. And maybe you can agree with me here. My experience going to all these different schools and sitting down with the coaches and talking about their problems, pain points, et cetera, is they all have pain points. There is no perfect school. I won't give the story away. But every schools that from the outside you think are like, oh, they've got it all. They're perfect. There's still issues and concerns and problems that arise, right? First of all, we're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds.
That's,
I mean, think about yourself as an
challenge of it all.
Yeah. Think about yourself as an 18 to 22-year-old, and now multiply it by 40, 50, 100 kids, 100 of them. Problems are going to come up. Culture is built on prior experiences and prior learning and current learning. What would you describe the culture that you were trying to help instill at these different places? So you're with Don Weber, great guy at Kentucky. Now you're Lonnie Greene at Purdue. Is there a way, can you describe what that culture looks like, sounds like, feels like?
Without being cliche, it is just kind of like a safe space where you can be vulnerable and you can work towards something and be okay with failure as long as you got back up, where you can kind of understand the standard and not try to water it down and just, hone in on it and take a responsibility. Like, we can work toward this. It doesn't mean that we're any less than or any more than any particular person, any particular school, but it's a journey. It's a journey. And Coach Weber had this picture. He loved, of course, in Kentucky, he loved horse racing. And he had this picture, and the quote said something about, being a part of the journey, and it was a zoomed in picture where two horses were trying to get to the line, like at the Derby, and one horse was biting the other one. And it was like the journey to the victory is what it was. So, he knew what it should look like too. And that's where, even as a head coach, that I understood that everyone has a role to kind of get there together. So it was more of those things, just hope, belief. You mentioned Coach Greene just being so positive. I think he really helped me to pull it together and be able to display it as a coach, be able to be unapologetic in, being hopeful, and pouring into people. And as a coach, being vulnerable. You're going to pour into your whole team and they're going to disappoint. Someone's going to disappoint you, but they're youth, they're young adults, they're growing. Don't take it personal, just keep pouring, just keep learning, So he really helped me to pull it together as a coach and even as a person. It was definitely a blessing. Life happens. And so, I had some deaths in the family and things like that. And he was just so supportive. And he just, poured into me and helped me. When you need time off, you take time off. Don't come back too early. Appreciate these things. And, he just lives and embodies something that, is just rare, just so rare.
Thanks for trying to define culture and your culture, because that's extremely hard, right? To put that in words, right? Like, that's why I said, like, what does it sound like, feel like? There's more to culture than just words and a poster, things like that. Those are all combined into it. When I heard you describing that culture, I heard self-responsibility, ownership, humility, leadership. That I just heard those, as you were talking, I was like, these are the kind of words that I heard. Trust, that was a major part of it, right? Being able to be vulnerable with someone else. You mentioned impact. First of all, go back to what you said there about Lonnie Greene. We need to make this more popular. When Coach talked about, hey, if there's, emergencies in the family, things like that, time off, like we get in sports for one, and then coaching sports, we get into this, like you have to be 24/7, 365, always on, never off, never about you. It's always selfless, right? So it's always about the other kids in the program, things like that. I'm not sure that's mentally healthy.
It's not.
So, and it's starting, we're talking a lot about leadership in today's podcast here. It starts with the top. It starts with that head coach of, I don't want to say allowing, but giving permission, being vulnerable of like, hey, Althea, you've had a death in the family. You need to get home. Go home. Take care of your family. We'll figure out your group for the next 5 days, whatever it takes. Like that's healthy. That's a healthy leader helping his or her entire staff. That needs to be more popular. Like we can't say that enough, because we don't ever say it. We talk about the grind and no sleep and all these kind of things. It's like, if you want to coach for 60, 70 years, I'm not sure. Exactly. So you mentioned making an impact. I distinctly remember seeing, it was after, I can't remember if it was your first year or second year at Purdue, seeing you guys at the Drake relays. And I just made a point. We were walking off the track, and I think I just kind of intercepted you, and it was you and Keith and Lonnie, and I'm probably missing someone here. And I was just like, hey guys, like, bravo. Like, you came into a pretty tough situation and made an immediate impact athletically, like moved up several spots in Big Ten, had several All-Americans, things like that, like kind of put Purdue back on the map after some downtime there. What was it about that staff that you were able to make such, we always talk in athletics, right? Like, oh, give me 4 years, right? Give me my recruiting class all the way through. You guys like took 4 days and made an immediate impact. What was it about that, whether it was the staff or just hidden talent that was there and just wasn't exploited? What was it that you guys made an immediate big time impact on Purdue's track program?
Definitely, I think the beginning was the staff that Coach Greene put together. We had all had some good experiences in the SEC and even at other universities, and so we came in just knowing the possibilities, not coming in. There's like this old story about teachers who come in, and when other teachers can tell them, well, they're not very smart, they're not very this, but this one teacher saw the roster and he saw these numbers and he thought it was their IQ, and he taught at a higher level and they performed well. And they're like, how did you do? It's like, where the IQ said that they were capable. He said, that's not their IQ, that's their social security number. So we kind of came in and we kind of knew how to protect our ears and our hearts, from water cooler talk and, just, being very positive and, what it would take. Sometimes it was working hard at the track. Sometimes it was, Coach Greene taught me this. It's like, you have to talk to them. You have to bring them in the office. You have to resonate with them. And so we worked really hard. And that was the first year. I was only at Purdue 1 year. So that was the first year. So in a short amount of months, it was some talent. And Coach Greene said, like, I know that baby girl. I know she ran in Chicago. I seen that baby girl can run. It's like, she just got to believe it. She's taking a mental break.
I'm going to have a podcast one day of just impressions of coaches like Lonnie. Like, there's so many good ones out there.
Yeah.
So it was the first year at Purdue. That's okay. Yeah. I just distinctly remember it being at Drake Relay. So yeah, that's in April, right? So within April, it was already like, man, what a turnaround Purdue is making here. And then obviously kept going. So where did you go after Purdue?
So after Purdue, that summer was, again, a lot of transition. And Coach Elliott got the head job at Clemson. And there was, some other transition that happened. And Coach Elliott called Coach Greene, and Coach Greene immediately hung up the phone and called me to his office. And he said, let's talk. He said, I know Coach Elliott's going to call you. And he was like, he went on what he's supposed to do as a head coach. We're building something, the recruiting class.
He's recruiting you. That's what he does.
He's recruiting me, right? And so we're sitting there And he's like, tell me what you need. What do you want? Like, what are you looking for? And I said, I want you to talk to me like my mentor. I don't want you to talk to me like my boss. And he kind of relaxed. He said, okay. And I said, I want to be, and I'm not ashamed to say this. I said, I want to be the next Carol Smith Gilbert or Tanja Buford Bailey. Tanja had just left Illinois to go to Texas, and Carol just left UCF to go to USC. And the first thing he said, he looked at me, he said, okay. He said, but let me tell you something. You're Althea Thomas. You're already good enough. And he said, but I do know what you're trying to say. Yes. And he kind of sat back and, he had known how good Clemson was. And, the Johnsons had been GAs under him, both Boogie and Chris. So he had been down there several times. And he said, we're moving the needle again. We're moving the needle here. He was like, but I will admit, you can do it a little faster there, but we're getting it done here. And he said, you'll be closer to dad. You'll be closer to home. He's kind of thinking about it. He's like, your mom. Okay. And he said, you might have to go. And he just kind of released me mentally and emotionally to just make a good decision.
So I want to put a pin in Tanja and Carol, because those two giants of our sport, and also amazing people, by the way. Literally was just on the phone with Tanja last week. I love her to death. And Carol, actually, too. I was just talking with her. Where did that come from? You said something important there when you were talking with Lonnie. When Lonnie brought you in and said, hey, Mark's going to call you. I dare not do a Lonnie impression. And you said, I want you to talk to me like my mentor, not as my boss. Now that's a tough statement. And what I mean by that is I think that's what they call speaking truth to power. So Lonnie has power over you, right? Because he's your boss in that sense. But I don't want to say push back, because that sounds a little aggressive, but you were able to say, hey, I don't need head coach Lonnie Greene right now. I need someone who I look up to in this sport, Lonnie Greene. I need you to talk to me that way. Where does that come from? That's an inner strength, right? That's not being afraid of Lonnie saying, well, you know what? I am your boss though, Lonnie, or Althea. So I am going to talk to you like if he would have said that, first of all, I'd been a little surprised, because I don't know if I've ever heard Lonnie say anything aggressive like that. But no one would push back like, oh, he is the head coach. All right, he has the right to have this conversation like this. But you had an inner strength of saying, hey, I need you to talk to me like my mentor. Now, luckily, and maybe you knew this, maybe this plays into it, Lonnie is so super smart and emotionally intelligent. He knew, like you even mentioned, he sat back and was like, okay, let's approach this differently. But where did that inner strength come from? Is that mentors in your life? Is that an experience, something that's happened in your, how did you do that? Really, you're still super young. I mean, this is your third college job. That's a rookie, rookie numbers in this profession. Where did that come from? That strength to be able to speak truth to power to Lonnie in that moment?
I think it's, like you said, a little bit of previous experience with coaches, a little bit of boldness that I've always had, and confident that in my boldness, I knew how not to be disrespectful. And a lot had to do with just the relationship we had built over the year with him, with his wife. I really began to look up to them, and I just knew that their core was so good that they would be able to talk to me and not let egos or agendas, personal agendas, get in the way. So I'm not sure if I would have been able to be that successful, with everybody, but I kind of confidently know, like, okay, I know how to get Coach Greene to just be Lonnie and not head coach Greene.
So I heard boldness, respectfulness, relationship. And if I add those all together, I get the word trust. You had developed a lot of trust with him as well in that period of time. That's awesome. That's really good. Okay. So I said, put a pin in it on Tanja and Carol, two Mount Rushmore people here. What was it about them that was kind of your examples? Like, hey, I want to be, and we say this quite often. I love, again, Lonnie, get on the podcast. And I say that I haven't even.
I'm gonna tell him.
Yeah, you tell him. You get him on this podcast. But I love his answer here. But we say this a lot, right? I want to be the next Tanja. I want to be the next Carol. And his response was, "You are Althea. Like you are good enough. There's no comparisons needed and things like that." But we have these goal sets, right? And usually it's these people that we kind of put on a pedestal, which is tough sometimes to do that. These are two great people to put on a pedestal. What about those two has been your driver? Like, I want to be like them. I'm doing air quotes on like what skill sets and personality traits about those two that you want to emulate?
Well, it's like you mentioned earlier, representation. They look like me. Coaching against them in the conference and Conference USA and in Big Ten, I got to see it firsthand. We got to talk. I would recruit against them. And I just really saw, like, if I have at UAB my first year, I had one girl score, maybe I had two girls score, and Kara had 22 score. I'm like, I am in awe at it, but I respected it because I knew how much I put in to the two and understanding how do you put in on the 22 and how you build every year. So I watched that, and again, watched Tanja. They had won indoor Big Tens that year, had done really well. And, when these big positions open, not that there's a destination school, but that someone somewhere thought or respected and observed their work so well that they at least got the call, whether they accepted it or not. I wanted to be that. I didn't want to be an afterthought. There were still some stereotypes that I was going against at the time. And quite honestly, I think I still go against. She's a great recruiter, but she doesn't coach. She doesn't stay very long, or, well, will the verdict still out? They got better, but she doesn't have a national champion. So it was just seeing that. And graduating from high school, I don't remember seeing very many females. And so as I'm becoming a coach embracing that I want to do this, they were examples that I just saw every day. I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. I saw when their athletes false started, tripped over hurdles, didn't win a race. I saw when they would come back. So it was something that I just saw firsthand, and it just so happened to be they were the best coaches, period, not female. They were some of the best coaches and are best coaches, period. And so, kind of where it comes from.
For all of you saying she can't do X, she can't do Y, she hasn't done Z, etc., this is the wrong person to give that type of, not that she needs your external motivation, but don't get on that list. I'm consistently reminded, I've said this quote 1,000 times in this podcast, and I'll probably say it 1,000 times more. It comes from the great Brooks Johnson, who I believe attributed it to the great George Williams at St. Augustine. And he said, if you're not in the huddle, you don't know the play. So it's easy to look at your story, Althea. Remember we talked about the bio page, right? And look at, the different schools that we're going through and make judgment. You're not in the huddle. You don't know what's going on in her mindset and her family and her life to make these moves. You ain't in the huddle. You don't know the play. It means you don't make judgment here. So we go to Clemson. You're back with your college coach. Like how is that dynamic? On not too long ago, he's telling you run these reps, and now you're on staff with him.
But again, he was the one that told me I was going to be a coach. And
that's right.
You remember? Yes, he told me I was going to be a coach. And even when I was coaching high school, he would tell me, okay, all the sprint coaches have these, certifications. You need to find the certification. And I said, okay. So, he would kind of guide me like, this is the small things that I see you need to do. And so when he got his first head coach job, I was like, I want to come. He wanted me to come. And, it really set me on my way to have full autonomy, try some events that I hadn't tried before, coach men, things like that.
Has Mark ever told you, I told you so?
He doesn't say I told you so. He kind of has that laid back Caribbean, like,
so he just looks back and just nods.
Yeah. He said, yep.
So you mentioned coaching men,
Mhm.
and we've had, I don't like asking this question. I remember talking this over with Karen Dennis from Ohio State, another Mount Rushmore of coaches in this country, because I would never ask it of a male. So I'm just going to ask it anyway, because I'm a terrible interviewer. How about that? So what was the difference? Not what was the difference? Was there any pushback? Was there males? Was there males on staff? Anybody that was like, she's female, she can't do it? What was, or was it seamless? Tell me that experience.
No, absolutely. Everybody kind of was very, just believe that if you're a good coach, you're a good coach. From Coach Elliott to Marvin Gibson, to we call him Bobby Bear, but Robert Ware. Everybody just was believing like you're a good coach, and they're listening. They would remind me like, whether it was one of the guys or one of the ladies, like, I walked by practice, I saw you talking, like they're listening to you. You can just tell they're paying attention. So they were very encouraging, and good allies.
Maybe the question is better, because like I said, I would never ask a male coach what was it like coaching females, but you talked about representation and the lack thereof of specifically female coaches. So maybe that's better angle, and the truth of it is, right? So as a guy athlete, they haven't seen or been coached by women in most cases, right? Because the representation is low. So now they're faced being told what to do, essentially, by a female coach. Do you attack it differently? Because, representation, you're not a male, so you don't know what they've gone through in life, right? As well. Do you attack it differently at all? Or is it, I'm a leader of this event group, we're going to go do things?
No, I'll say this. If my Twitter handle wasn't Coach's Daughter, it would be Super Aunt. And so I've never met a male who doesn't love his mama. And so I'm not the mama, I'm the super cool aunt. Remember, I just have initials, AT. And so I never got any pushback from that way. And they kind of morphed into that. And even their parents, their dads as well, like, you're his auntie, right? You're his second mama, and as a parent, when you whether you're dropping your son or your daughter off, you're always thinking that. I have friends who have kids in college now, and, it's kind of like, I'm leaving them with someone else, and will they take care of them and look out for them the way that I do? So there was no pushback there. Ironically, sometimes it was more difficult with the female athletes. Most female athletes have been coached by men. And so naturally, two females, two queens, the anticipation of any friction is probably bigger than the reality of it. So, I learned over time, like you said, just developing trust. And it looks different for a male and a female. To me, males want to trust that you can make them better. And everybody is human, and they have this innate, need to feel loved or feel important outside of the sport. But females are really heavy on, I want to know how much you care about me before I want to know if you can make me fast. And so, it's just developing trust. And as an aunt, I've played that role. Like, your parent is your parent, but I'm your aunt, and I can come behind, my brother with his teenage, daughters, and say, well, I know my brother can be a little crazy, but you're wrong too. Like, you didn't come home on time, so it was just kind of natural for me to be able to do that. But I did have to learn some hard things.
That's you made a great correction there. We all have our own experiences in our own lanes. And so I think about it from the male side, because spoiler alert, I'm a male, about not being coached by women, but I didn't even think about the flip side. Yeah, that's right. Most females are also coached by men growing up through their athletic career. That's a good correction. So how did it go at Clemson, and where did we go next?
Went well, was there for 4 years, was able to be a part of, continuing some things that, You know, the Boogie Johnson had started, and we won conference and had some national champions and All-Americans. You know, I was charged with coaching the long sprinters, but as we know, naturally, 400 hurdlers may be really good in the 1600 hurdlers. Your 400-meter runners may be really good the 2 on the 4x1. So I was able to really continue to develop in a wide range of events. You know, 2 years in a row, did the 400-meter sweep on the men's side at conference.
What, 1, 2, 3?
1, 2, 3.
Dude.
The first year that I thought we can do it, I put that expectation or the challenge. And I said, you know, I think this can happen. If we do this, let's make a deal. And I said, if you go to conference and get 1, 2, 3, you can give me a workout. I'll do the hardest workout. And they were, oh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And they crashed and burned. Not a single one made the final.
Oh, no, true crash and burn.
True crash and burn.
I thought you were going to say they got like 6, 7, 8. No.
We didn't make the
finals. Oh,
didn't make the final. And the day of the final, we were at Virginia Tech indoor, the day of the prelim. And when that happened, they all looked like $1 million, and they all hit a wall at the same place. And I could not sleep. And I was up all night. I'm going through workouts. I'm like, what did I do? Like, it wasn't one person. I did something. And I didn't sleep. And when it boiled down to it, I took the challenge and didn't execute. I got too safe. And I rested and rested and rested. And they were in Netflix and chill mode physically. Their bodies just weren't tuned up. Oh my God, I was so upset with myself. But I literally went to Shakeout the next morning and apologized. And I told them it wasn't them, it was me. But because they actually went out there and ran on the prelim, that they would be ready for the 4x4. And we win the 4x4.
You won the 4x4.
Yep.
After not having a finalist in the 400.
Nope.
I imagine that's got to be a fairly rare stat right there, that a team doesn't have a finalist in the finals of the 4, but wins the 4x4.
Right.
You know what I really learned about that story? Here's what I learned: the difference between male and female coaches. Your challenge to them was, I'll do the hardest workout. Guys do things like, I'll let you shave my hair. You know, I was like, if Althea says, you know, the challenge was to shave her hair, I'm gonna start questioning mentally a little bit here, Althea. That you know, as a female coach, you're like, never entered my mind, not happening. No, I'll do 100 other things before that happens. Tell me, you know, you mentioned Clemson and the ACC. What a great conference! A lot of great teams, athletes there, coaches that are there. I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, so you're free to say, no, Mike, move on. There was a time during this time period, and it probably was before you and continues after, where specifically the 4x4, from my understanding, Clemson and Florida State. I mean, just like, not just battles on the track, like sometimes physical battles. What was that? If you would be so kind to oblige us. And again, I'm putting you on the spot here, so you say no, and we move right on. What was the culture of this angst and anger and competitiveness between these two squads, specifically at the end of the race at the 4x4? Was it because you guys always were, a lot of times it was coming down between that event and you two for winning the title, or what was this?
Well, first of all, anybody knows that the best event in track and field is the 4x4 at the end because of everything.
Amen. Absolutely.
And you know, myself and even Coach Gibson, he's, you know, graduate of LSU, Coach Elliott, graduate of LSU. You know, we have been a part of some of these very intense moments of fellowship that you speak of in our conference. And
fellowship, love it.
That's a Lonnie Greene term. Intense moment of fellowship. But I would say that we were there for it. We were like, oh yeah, it's going down. But then I'll just say no comment.
Rightfully so. All good there. All good there. I do, I'm kind of torn. I'll make the statement, then we'll move on. I'm kind of torn because obviously I don't like fighting in sports at all because that's just a lack of emotional control, in my opinion. Yada yada. There's just no place for it, right? That's what boxing and MMA and stuff is for, right? But I do love, that kind of emotion is supposed to be for, I'm doing air quotes here, supposed to be for football and basketball. I love that it's in our sport. I don't like the fighting. Please don't do that. Don't take it that far. But I love the, like, man, I'm going to 110% of my body and soul and emotion is going to help my team win the title. And that means I got to go through you, other team. So I do love that part, Okay, so we officially got a no comment on that. So that's probably the right response there. So let's move on. You said you did 4 years at Clemson. Where are we going next?
So then after Clemson, I went to Georgia. And so that was a summer 2017. And so again, not thinking about destination schools or even destination conferences, but, as I'm talking to different mentors or even, quite frankly, people I may look up to, or they're in getting opportunities that I want to know, what do I need to qualify for these opportunities? I wanted the opportunity to, again, broaden my experience coaching events. So like I mentioned at Clemson, I had men and women. And then I went to Georgia to coach the women from the 100 through a little bit of the 800 if you were a 4-8. And so, that's where it went next.
Where is your mindset? So you're a coach. We're done trying to pick that path, right? As far as today, we're a coach. Is your mindset at all at this point of, I want to be a head coach? Or are you completely satisfied and happy with continuing development as an assistant coach at this point?
Well, going back to Kentucky when Coach Weber retired, and this may even kind of preface the conversation I had with Coach Greene, he sat down with me and I asked, can we sit down? And I said, now that you're retired, like, what advice would you give someone? What would you give your younger self? What would you give to me? And he was, just giving different examples that in his transition, he saw where sports and athletics was going. And he actually put it in me like, maybe you should think about administration. You may want to do that, as you get older and start a family. And so when he said that, I asked, like, how do I tell people? And he said, you ask for different assignments to be on different committees, to be a part of recruiting or interviewing processes. And so when I went to Purdue, I did ask to do different things like that, as to, be as a recruiting coordinator, see what it's like to manage that budget, develop relationships with people in the business office. So I was kind of going down that path. And even at Clemson, Barbara Kennedy Dixon, rest her soul, she was a SWA, and she was molding a compliance director, who's now one of the associate athletic directors there. And so they were pouring into me and, again, let me be a part of committees and get different experiences. So I was thinking about how to continue this and become an athletic director, but I just definitely loved coaching. And, you ask for the good and the bad, and I'm like, ADs don't spend a lot of time with the athletes. So I was kind of going back and forth, what that really meant in real space, what I thought an AD should be doing or an associate AD should be doing, but just really liking, being a coach and being day-to-day impactful with the student athletes.
Were you doing anything outside of your institution? So I love that you were working with SWA and other, interviewing committees, things like that. That's a part of not necessarily coaching, but of the athletic department experience, right?
Yes.
And sometimes, life is full of excuses, right? I mean, it's all priority. Sometimes we, as coaches, we can say, well, I'm too busy recruiting and taking care of my own kids to even do those things. And then there's others that make priorities of like, okay, well, I want to help the entire athletic department. Were you doing anything outside of your institution, whether it was through USTF, CCCA, whether it was through USATF, speaking at clinic? Were you doing anything on the outside as well?
Yeah, so I was invited to do a seminar at one of the conventions with USTF CCCA. I had done from the first year that the certification courses started, I had done a lot of those courses. Even in the community, I got involved, with my church and, with the youth. And so started doing things with them, developing ideas, how to help them reach their full potential individually. And so, different things like that. With USATF, I wouldn't say I was doing a lot of things. I did get an opportunity to attend one of their training clinics, so to speak, for minority females who wanted to become head coaches. So I got to spend about 4 days in Virginia with a staff that they had put together. And I was in there with Dana Boone and Elisha Brewer and, Dee Quarles, like we were about 13 of us, and we really got poured into on that. So I was doing things like that.
Do you feel any responsibility? We've talked a lot about representation here, whether it's to your own female athletes or through, USTFCA has a great women's empowerment program, coaching program. You mentioned that one with Dee and Alicia, awesome people as well, by the way. Do you feel a sense of, what's the word, that a responsibility as that representation of like, hey, gals that are on my team, you also can be a coach or an administrator, like you can do all these things? Or is it more of just like, I live my life and so that's how I represent?
It's a little bit more of I live my life and that's how I represent, and just, encouraging them to find their passion. But sometimes in finding, you don't know what you don't know. So it is also still exposing them, like, these are opportunities within the athletic department. It doesn't have to be coaching. It doesn't have to be an associate AD as you think as a figurehead, but, someone in student services. I think there's a big need for track athletes and females also in strength and conditioning. It is completely, missing there. And so it's more like being myself, but just encouraging them, like finding it, because everybody's not gonna work in athletics or be a coach, but whatever it is, like kind of develop the ability to search and to be open, and then to really network. Network is a overused, under applied kind of term.
So expound on that. What does networking mean to you?
I think networking means to me meeting people, going in spaces where you're going to be in contact with people that are doing what you're doing or doing something successful. And in meeting them, following up, developing a mentorship relationship, and not just saying, hey, I met Mike with Gil and he said I can put him as a resume. Like, he doesn't know you. Try to get to know each other, try to know each other's strengths and weaknesses, try to learn, like you said, from each other's mistakes, and, just really, but networking is not an event. It's a long-term relationship.
I love how you said that. I'm going to say it in my words. Networking is not about how can I meet someone so they can do something for me.
Right.
It's how can I meet someone and provide value to them? Like we talked with mentorship and learning their weaknesses and strengths and positives and negatives. Yeah, that's awesome. That I love that you hit that nail on the head. That's really, I was kind of searching there at the end. I was like, I really hope she goes this route, and you nailed it. That was really, really good. So Georgia, that was a fun time. And I mean that in all the great ways. Petros, a great friend of mine. You guys won national titles. We're in the hunt for a lot more. You did it. Here's me from the outside looking in. You did it differently in the sense of field events, very heavy. So how was that time at Georgia? Was it all you thought it was going to be? You were coaching on the women's side, the 100 up through the 800, depending on the type of 800 athlete. How did all that go? What was your experience there?
Well, it was very fun, very unique. I recruited Lena Irby to Clemson. And when I was at Purdue, I saw Lena run when she was in 8th grade. And so as I'm watching her, and I'm at youth trials when the year she kind of broke through, I saw her coach, and she went from 55 to 52
Wow.
in one trials.
Wow.
And he said that's the one. That's the one that was in 8th grade. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's getting older and she's running fast. So I recruited her, of course. You know, she didn't sign with Clemson, but she signs with Georgia. And even Marvin Gibson, when I said, hey, you know, I'm going to go to Georgia, I wanted to tell you myself. And he said, oh, you lucky dog. You get to coach Lena after all.
Wow. Hey, that's a special athlete that a coach specifically calls out, like, oh, you lucky dog, you get to work with Lena. Yeah.
Yes. And so, you know, it was a great opportunity. All those ladies that I coached that year, you know, Lena, of course, her freshman year just did amazing things.
Amazing.
And the other ladies, they made their mark, and they came along in the later years, and Amber Tanner and Micaiah Ransby. Amber Tanner running 201 last year. And so going back to what I said, like, I felt like I was able to successfully and immediately, you know, help them see a culture that was existing at Georgia, but wasn't always spread consistently throughout the entire team. So we had to bring the sprints along, because like you said, it was known as a jump school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why would you go to Georgia to sprint?
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of took that as a big time challenge.
Yeah, people, you got to stop challenging her. Just stop. What you mentioned team and culture at Georgia. You're part of your first national championship staff. You win the big one. Very few people win this trophy, man. It's extremely hard to win the national title.
Yes.
So what was that like as as you're standing there? The confetti is coming down. They're handing the trophy. You got the hats on. I have to imagine all the emotions that you start kind of thinking about, all the different stops, from coaching high school, UAB, all the different people, Lonnie Greene, people pouring into you. What's that like emotionally of like, man, we did it. We hit the pinnacle. This is the pinnacle in our sport of NCAA coaching, right? This is the pinnacle. What's that emotional feeling at that time?
Oh, it was so thick. Like, I just remember being like full, like in the moment. It was so thick. And it's at Texas A&M indoors. We're executing on the prelim day. We're getting people through to the finals. I think the first field event may have been the long jump. We go 1, 2, 3, and and it's happening. And people are like walking up, the other contenders, and they're trying to congratulate you ahead of time. But, it's a little bit of a mental game. It's a little bit of a tactic as well. But you're just like, what are you talking about? I just wanted to get in the final. Like, I'm not even thinking about that, And so it was just really thick, but trying to manage that, because I'm not good with my facial expressions. And I know my athletes feed off of my energy. So I had to learn how to control myself, go in a space where I can exhale or scream or whatever. And it's like, all right, we're under control. This is what we've been practicing for. And especially, I was charged with Lena Irby. She was the lone contributor in the women's sprints at that meet, and just a freshman. And so helping to manage her emotions and, her desires to win. And it was just, when it was all said and done, it just felt so good. And it was much better than winning as an athlete. It just felt so good. And I had teammates that lived in Texas that came down and they celebrated with me. And it just was amazing.
Wow. Tell me more about that. As far as it felt better to win as a coach than it did as an athlete. What was the difference?
Well, again, it kind of came full circle. Some of my closest friends from college were there. And I'm talking about people I've been in their weddings. I'm godmother to their kids. And this relationship, this friendship, this sisterhood that we have, it has lasted 20 years. And so when you're an athlete, you're like, oh, I did it. You're calling your parents, they're at the meet. You're like, me. But then as I'm soaking it in, I'm looking at these 8 ladies that are beginning a journey that I know is going to last for I was experienced at the like 20-year mark,
Mm.
so it was just great. Like, oh, wow, they're a part of the club. They've done something, and it's not just the winning, but they've, been in the trenches together, and they see how working hard and failing and succeeding and failing and succeeding, how if you just keep going, what can happen, and they're going to be able to take this. I'm the only one coaching in my close circle of friends from college, but they're doing other great things. And I definitely know that their experiences is helping them on their journey.
I love that turn from being the athlete and being selfish, and that's not a negative.
Yeah.
I completely think to be any kind of athlete, whether you're a terrible one like I was or a great one like Althea and others were, you have to take all the instruction from coach and your nutritionist and your professors, and how can I make it to be the best I can be in my event or events. When a big switch happens when you become coach, because now all the things that are pouring into you, USATF, USTFCC education, mentors, past experiences, you're now taking that through you to the athletes.
Mhm.
So I love that. Like when I was an athlete, it was me, me, me. And then as a
Mhm.
coach, it's like, oh, not only I love how you express that, not only your athletes and the failures and successes, but also your network of past teammates and friends and like, it was like this, I just kind of pictured these big arms wrapping around all of them. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
we did this. Like it's not just me. I have to have everybody here to make this, to accomplish this goal.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's me thinking about it, I'm getting full all over again.
So did you guys won 2 titles while you were there?
Yes, so in 2018, the women indoor won, and the men, I think, were fourth,
Right.
third or fourth. Let me
Yeah.
turn. I got my trophies on. Let me see.
Nice. Humble brag there. Yeah, I love it. Deserve
I
it.
can't.
Deserve it.
I'm literally trying to remember. But then in
Yeah.
outdoor season, the men pulled the
Right.
big upset to win, and the women got
Right.
upset with the USC and Purdue battle in the 4x4.
Oh, one of the greatest races ever.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
goodness, that's right. USC. So USC's anchor, I don't remember who it was. It's probably somebody who was just in the
Kendall
Olympics.
Williams.
Yeah, Kendall.
No, Kendall Ellis. Kendall Ellis. I'm
Kendall
sorry.
Ellis. She sniped her right at the line, right? And then USC wins by 1. Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah, you should
And we
see
lost
her.
that.
You should see Althea's eyes at me right now. Like, thanks for making me relive that, Mike. Yeah. Was one of the most amazing races in the whole world.
It was.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I wanted to have you describe that dichotomy. So you win 2 national titles.
Mhm.
Plenty of amazing coaches only win 1. By the way, plenty of amazing coaches don't win any.
Ever. Yeah.
It is that tough. Okay. You're blessed to be on 2 of these squads. However, at the same time, at
Yeah.
least this once, but I thought there was a couple, you guys were in the hunt and you
Yeah.
didn't win.
Right.
How do you, well, what's the emotional roller coaster, if you will, of winning a national title, but the other team misses, and it's the most devastating thing in the world? It's
Right.
how do you reckon that? How do you handle that?
Well, going back, at the beginning of the meet or earlier in the meet, Lena Irby is still a freshman. She had got third and third indoor in the 2 and the 4.
Right.
She was having a great year, and we were really honing in on winning. And we don't have a goal at a time. We go through a process, a plan for the race, and you let the time happen, right? And she runs 49.80. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like, what did she just do? And again, I'm trying to be the professional coach and keep it together. And I'm walking from the 200 mark, and we're at Oregon, right? So, you go back in the old stadium, you walk around, you come on the backside in the warm-up area.
Mm-hmm.
And the first person I see is Lonnie Greene.
I knew you were gonna say Lonnie.
First person I see, and he comes running to me with his arms open, and he said, I told you that you were just as good as Carol and Tanja. He said, didn't I? but then I'm crying, then he's crying, and he was like, I'm so proud of you. Now go find your girl. She got about 15 minutes before the 200. I was like, I know, that was
But
so
he's so cognizant. It's not even
so
his athlete. I love that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and she runs it too, and she gets third, and we have other athletes competing. Our heptathlete, she gets second. Our high jump, we're getting these points, but it comes down to the 4x4, and this girls only day, right? Comes down to the 4x4, and we're all at the fence. The men had won the day before.
Oh, okay. I was
So
going to
they
ask
have
that.
their
Okay.
hat.
I didn't know which one it was.
Yes,
So
they won the day before.
On Friday, you are at Cloud 9, national
Yes.
title, the first one for the men. And now we're going into
Yes.
Saturday, and I don't know whether you're favorites or not, but you were in the hunt, so that's all that matters. Okay, great. Okay, so you're high, going into the 200, going down to the 4x4. Okay.
Yeah, so we're at the 4x4. So the men are there with their t-shirts and hats, and they're like, all right, you're about to get your t-shirts and hats. And Lena's being from Indiana and me coaching at Purdue, we knew every girl on that relay. And so Purdue's running well. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we were definitely cheering for Purdue to win.
No one's putting, no, of course. People would doubt you if you were like, oh, we just wanted to see a good competition. No, you're trying to win a national title. Of course, you're rooting
I
for
want
Purdue.
Coach Greene to do well. Yeah, I want Coach Greene to do well. Lena are friends with him. She ran in high school with him. We want the title. And we're there, and each leg is going by. We're like, doing a good job. And the fourth leg goes by, and like the guys are like, they're winning. And me and Lena's eyes are open, like
it was like a 100-meter gap.
It was like, but Lena had just an indoor. Kendall beat Lena head up and broke the American record in the 400. And then Lena beat her, but she respected and knew what she was capable of. And so we're just like, it's not over to us. Like, we're just like, come on. And then, we had an athlete at Clemson when we lost a race really close, a relay. And she said, it's like when you're hot day in the summer, you go to the ice cream shop, you got 2 scoops on your cone, and just when you're about to lick it, someone bumps your shoulder and you drop the ice cream. That's what it felt like. It just felt like right when you, and it's just like, oh, that just happened.
I mean,
and everybody has dropped some ice cream, so you know exactly what that feels like.
Yes. Unfortunately, when I dropped my ice cream, it didn't move me from the first place trophy to the second place trophy. And on top of that would be one thing. That is emotional dagger right there. But the emotionality of a school winning both. Another, you were at LSU. They did it several times, right? Texas A&M has done it several times. I know I'm missing. I bet you USC must have done it a couple times as well. But that's so rare and so special. I mean, I can't imagine. It had to be like the most heartbreaking second place trophy ever in the world. I could only imagine.
Absolutely.
Oh man.
Well, you gotta count your blessings.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You did still walk away with a trophy, and you got a couple of national championship rings. Absolutely. So very emotional. So let's continue this emotional roller coaster. You go from Georgia to where? The worst segue ever.
So after 4 years being at Georgia, I got the call when a position opened, and I guess my peers thought enough, and ADs have been watching and asked me to interview. And so now I'm a Vanderbilt Commodore.
So let's talk about this, because we have talked about you coaching sprints. We've talked about you coaching hurdles. We've talked about you coaching jumps. Vandy's a distance school.
Is it?
What are you going to do differently? Why Vandy? Maybe that's the better question. Why does this great sprints, hurdles, jumps leader go to Vandy?
Well, I think the beginning, before you even get to events, is that, I've kind of talked about like the evolution of track and field as I've witnessed it, in my 40 years on this earth, being immersed as a baby, watching club track, college representation. I think society used to really have these clear but invisible lines that you kind of, either pick being one or the other. Either you're really smart, you're a really good athlete,
Mm.
you know? And I think you can see in other sports, especially women's basketball and things like that, where it has evolved, where you no longer have to choose. You know, you can be socially accepted and you can be a Gabby Thomas to go to Harvard and become an Olympian. You can, go to these other, prestigious universities and be in the Sweet 16 and the Final Four and Elite Eight in women's basketball. And I think it is time in track and field where, again, all my journeys, even going to Huffman High School, like I wanted to be the reason why people could, from Huffman, become SEC, a big Power 5 scholarship athlete contending for national titles. So it's the same here. Vanderbilt is known, no one disputes their elite education. No one disputes the SEC. And I didn't realize the impact, but Nashville is a real city. I didn't know how country I had become being in these college towns. And you don't have to choose. You don't have to choose. At a point, and when you're asking me, like, what were you thinking in your career? At a point in my college coaching career, I kind of had accepted that you're going to live in small college towns, but then you can go visit other places. And so I just think that the opportunity here at Vanderbilt exceeded any limitation or any perceived limitation that anyone could try to say is out there. And it definitely benefits any student athlete that comes to Vanderbilt. You got the conference, you got the degree, you got the city.
Yeah, representation matters, right? So like we've been talking about this whole time. So, Vanderbilt academically, come on. Like you said, no one's going to dispute it. Here's the good news is other great academic institutions have done really, really well, specifically in our sport, not even talking about women's basketball and such, right? Stanford, hello, really, really good. USC is no slouch academically, people. Look what they've done. North Carolina's, Harvard, you mentioned with the great Gabby Thomas there. Success has happened in great academic institutions to lower academic institutions. The difference is the leadership and their goal sets, their expectations of the program. So it starts with the leadership. We've learned a lot about you. One of the first things you had to do at Vandy, I suppose, is put together a staff. Why don't you talk to us about who you've gotten together to go on this journey with you?
Well, similar to like what you said, everybody perceives Vanderbilt as a distance school. And I definitely didn't want to come in and be thought of on the team where the sprinters got who they want. What are we going to do in the distance? So my first meeting, my first Zoom was with the cross country team. And so my first charge was to get a cross country coach ASAP. It's the first event. They're a very valuable part of this team. And so Mike Porter, who I worked with at Clemson, I called him and asked him to come. He was actually at Kentucky working with Coach Greene as a volunteer. And so I said, I would like for you to come here and be the men's cross country coach. Ironically, his brother ran at Virginia. He ran distance and he lives in Nashville. So he's our volunteer that worked with the women.
Wow. By the way, UVA, another great academic school that's had success. Yes. Now, I got this, I got to know, you have this Zoom call with the distance crew. Now, these are all smart young people.
Yes.
They did their research. As soon as you were named head coach, they were like, oh, who's this Althea, Tom? Let me know.
Yes.
What was it like? Were they just like, did they have their arms crossed? Like, okay, sprint coach, what are you going to tell us? This is Vandy, or was it welcoming? What was specifically the distance? What was their immediate reaction to having?
No, surprisingly, I mean, I honestly was surprised. They were so excited, and what they were like on Zoom like this, and they were just excited, and they were like you said, very intelligent, and so they communicate very well. And so they will unmute. I asked if they had questions. I let them know my priority is to get a distance coach in here and get you all going. I don't want to disrupt the training. I don't want to delay anything about the season. And they immediately unmute to let me know, Coach, we support you. We're excited. Thank you so much for calling us. And they were just very grateful. And, I held to my promise and, got the porters on board. We got in time, got everybody here in time to do a preseason trip. I went with them and pretended to think I can run a little bit. But it's just been a great time with that group, and they're doing really well. We are in the season, and we're just excited. They're doing really, really well.
What a bunch of great future leaders, because no one would have complained or pushed back if they would have said, okay, coach, that's cool, we'll see how it goes. But instead they knew how important it was to say, hey, coach, we support you, we're Vandy, we're a team, let's go, let's get it done. I love that. Like, I mean, that to me is just like, that gave me kind of like goosebumps of like, oh, that's leadership.
Now they help me to it. Now when it took a
Sure.
little longer to get some paperwork through, they'll text, they say, coach, do we have an update today? And I'm like, not today, let's wait till Monday. Thank you.
It never goes as fast as you want, ever. So you get Mark Potter. I'm sorry. Porter. I should know that. Our sister brand in basketball is Porter Athletics. I should remember that. So Mark Porter is there. His brother comes on as a volunteer assistant coach as well. So what about the rest of the staff? There's more than distance and sprints. So what else we got going on here?
Yeah, so definitely kind of going back to the makeup of the team, and what I've learned, as you said at Georgia, we did it differently. But what I've learned is it's not doing it differently, but just having a whole team. Oftentimes you see teams and they concentrate too heavily in one area or the other. And even when Coach Petros asked me to come to Georgia, he talked about that. He talked about that to the sprinters. He's like, as the jumps coach, I don't like that they say this is a jump school. This is a good place to run, to throw, to jump, period. This is a good track team. And so coming in, I appreciate and understand that every event area is important.
Great point.
When you look at schools who are winning trophies, they have some sort of spread. They cover the spread in some way.
And that's a really good point, right? UGA had All-American, if not national champion thrower during that time, obviously sprinters and multis, et cetera. I think back to the old school Arkansas. Paul Walters, right. I think back to the old school University of Arkansas, which you would say, oh yeah, they won by distance. Don't forget they always had a jumper or two or three and sprinters, a relay team. Yeah, that's a really good point. Absolutely. So how did you attack that with your staff?
So, one person that I definitely wanted to get, I met her when I worked at Kentucky, and she had just graduated from Kentucky and was beginning to coach. And we tell the story a lot, and she would remind me over the last 10 years when I would see her. She was very high energy, very passionate. But as a young coach, you kind of learn, like, you got to learn different personalities. And I actually told her the first time I met her that she needed to quit. I said, you're not going to get a bunch of views. If you can't understand that, you need to quit. And she was like, what?
Interesting. Yeah, I was just about to say, I can't see her just taking that.
Oh, she didn't take it. And then I laughed. And she tells me, and then you just kept laughing at me. I was like, yeah, because you were so high end. And then I said, oh, you're not going to quit. I said, you're going to get fired though. She was like, what? I can't believe you're telling me that. And I said, if you don't get fired, one day when I become a head coach, I would love for you to work for me. And she would remind me all the time. You remember you said I was going to get fired? Guess what? You see what my girls did? You see what my guys did? It's like, I see. I said, you're doing a good job. Then I'll text her. I'm going to come watch your event. What time do they throw? And she was like, I'm throwing, they're going to throw this time. So it was Ashley Muffet Kovacs. And so, I immediately gave her a call, understanding that she was in a very crucial time getting ready for the Olympics.
Yeah.
But definitely wanted to let her know, I'm here in Vanderbilt and I would love for you to consider coming. And so we did a quick, 24 hours in Nashville with her. And then she needed to get back to coach her husband, Joe, and her other athletes and go to Tokyo. And then after she came from Tokyo, she called me to let me know that she definitely was going to come. And, they haven't had a throwing program here in maybe 15 or 20 years. I mean, we couldn't even find many implements. And so, you talked about leadership, our leadership here, and Candace, and athletic director, and my sports supervisor, Michelle. We immediately, and I told Ashley when she was here in her interview, I need you just walk around with a notepad and a paper, and you need to write everything that we need to be successful. And she was kind of reluctant to keep the list going and turn the page and I'm like, no, write it down. And they understood what it meant to say we're going to do a throws program here. And they are committing and have committed and have things in place so that we can have what we need to be a premier throws program.
So, and Ashley, love Ashley. Come on. She's one of the greatest people there is. And not even one of the most up and coming throws coaches in this country. She is one of the best throws coaches in this country. Has done an amazing job with our athletes, obviously with Joe as well. I mean, it's just fantastic. So as we start to wrap up today, Althea, and I know you have a long list here. What's got you excited about Vandy? What's, you're coming into your first year. We're getting, I don't know if I want to say post-COVID, because unfortunately we're still dealing with some stuff, right? But we're going to have an indoor season. We're going to have an outdoor season here. We're going to have SECs, indoor and outdoors. What's got you excited about this first year?
It's kind of just rinse and repeat of some experiences that I've already had. I'm excited about the building. I'm excited about recruiting. I'm excited about finding people who are bold enough, who have the talent, who have the motivation to go against what the norm may be and establish something here, be pioneers. I'm excited about the athletes that are on the team. I'm excited how excited they are, how they feed off our energy, how I told one of the sprinters the other day, I kind of was just shoulder to shoulder with her, and every move she made, I'm like, you got to do this. You're doing good there. Do this. And then I said, I know, I'm on you. She said, no, coach, I love it. I love it. Tell me more. Tell me more. So I'm excited with all of it. I'm excited to, have, redefine success and have these small steps of victory towards the bigger goal to be, a contender at nationals. The goal doesn't change. The assignment doesn't change. We're not dictated by what we see or what history has said. And so I'm just excited. And I didn't get to mention my fourth person, but Coach Justin Byron. Yeah, I mean, I first met him recruiting at UAB and became friends with him and continued to recruit athletes to Kentucky. I signed several athletes from his program to Kentucky, and Keela Tyson and Shaquila Saunders. And so we just became good friends and shared ideas about training and got to watch each other. And so after he had been at Cornell doing so well, I thought he was just a perfect person to come and be at this high level institution and bring it together in that culture.
This may just be I've been out of coaching for too long. The reason I totally forgot about Justin, and I'm so sorry, Justin. Here's the spoiler alert. Justin has actually been nominated to be on the podcast, so he's on the list. Yeah. As soon as he got hired, someone, I won't name who it was, I won't spoil it, reached out and said, you got to have this guy on the podcast. He's amazing. He's awesome, full of energy. Like, he's going to kill it at Vandy as well.
I wish you would have told me before, because he's going to come with so much energy. Man.
That's why I didn't tell you. We couldn't have two of you. That'd have been too much energy, too much boldness. I couldn't have handled it. I'd have just shirked away and just let you guys just talk. But how does that work? So you mentioned 4 coaches. That's the real reason I forgot Justin, because I was thinking of 3 coaches because of a women's program. How does that work that you're able to have 4 full-time coaches?
Well, we do have men's cross country. So we sponsor men's cross country. It's just non-scholarship.
Okay.
So that's why Coach Mike Porter is the men's cross country coach. His brother is the volunteer women's distance cross country. And we have myself, Ashley, and JB as the 3 full-time women.
Because you have men's cross country, that's how we can staff up.
Yeah, that's been the magic question.
Yeah. That's why I had 3 in my head the whole time. That's why I didn't even think about Justin. So Justin, I'm so sorry. I hope when I get to you on my list that you're going to still be here and maybe remind me of this and make me eat crow a little bit here, buddy. Well, Thea, thank you so much. You know, you're so busy, and it's been a battle to get time with you because your time is so valuable with all the things that you're getting going, hiring people, getting practice started, structuring your scheduling, things like that, budgeting, all the great things that are moving forward with the track program. And I've even kept you over our allotted time.
That's okay.
You're such a
I've
giver.
been
I love
enjoying
you. I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. You know, again, your time is one of the most valuable things that you can give us. And I think your unique path to where you are today is going to help a lot of our listeners, help people understand that, you know, there is a path. You don't have to be this. I wanted to be a track coach since the day I came out of the womb. Like, you can actually see other career paths and passions that can bring you back into coaching at a very high level. And I think your story is just, it's just super unique and so valuable. And I'm just so humbled that you would share it with us today.
Well, thank you. I have to say one thing. My dad says hi. And every time I say, oh, Mike, oh, poker player. And I have to let you know, during quarantine, my sister lives in Atlanta. I'm in Athens. So we just spend a lot of time together. We played so much poker with my dad that my 4-year-old nephew told my sister and her husband, scared money don't make money. And immediately my sister said, no more poker while he's awake. He has to go to bed first.
That kid's a future CEO, president, something. That kid's taking over the world, man. That's awesome.
And the application was great because in this real estate market, they were discussing about trying to get a home. And as they're going back and forth, he looks up from playing and says, scare money don't.
Oh, man.
So again, this kind of just gives insight into the Thomas family, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't want to play tiddlywinks with the Thomas family. I would just get crushed. You guys, there ain't no activity that healthy competition isn't coming out loud and clear. And that's what's so exciting about you as the head coach and director there at Vanderbilt. It's exciting. I love to see change, right? And positive change. And so it's going to be exciting to watch your story continue to be unfolded, continue to be written here. I'm excited to get you back on the podcast in 10 years and talk about the SEC titles and the national titles, and more importantly, the individuals that you and your staff will have impacted that will go on to be coaches and doctors and lawyers and CEOs and poker players and and all the rest. You're mentoring a lot of great leaders there, which is the most entrusting thing someone can give you. Like you talked about parents giving their kids to you for their career. And I'm just excited to see that growth in your program, your staff, and your athletes individually.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy that you invited me and that we made some time. This has been the best 2 hours that I've experienced at the beginning of my day. It's going to just keep me charged all day.
You're so awesome. Tell Dad I said hello, man. One of the greatest people in the world, man. Love him to death. What an impact that guy has made in our world. I love him to death. And thank you for being here today. I'm so glad that you got to hear Althea's story, her journey, and the many, many mentors. Like, I just love talking about Mark Elliott and Lonnie Greene and Petros and just other people that have poured into her. And that's really what this is about, right? That's what our lives is. We are an amalgamation of everybody that pours into us. I'm so excited. One day, I know I'm going to interview someone here on the podcast, and they're going to talk about how Althea poured into their lives. And that's what it's all about. I love it. So thanks for being here today. If you received value, I'll go out on a limb and say someone else in your network would receive value hearing Althea's story in her words. Share this on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, smoke signals, whatever you crazy cats are using nowadays. And join us next week. We're going to have another awesome coach, and we're going to talk about their journey. Thanks a lot and have a great day.